Newt Gingrich has been on the trail for Donald Trump, and he apparently takes this whole voter fraud thing very seriously. Let's listen to. We have a couple of doozies for you here. First, Newt, and then we'll even visit America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
This is not about election officials at the precinct level. This is about last Friday when the networks spent 23 minutes on the Trump tape and less than 1 minute, all three networks combined, less than 1 minute on Hillary Clinton's secret speeches that were being revealed in WikiLeaks.
But you say it's not at the precinct level, but Trump has also told people to monitor polling stations.
They should. You look at Philadelphia, you look at St. Louis, you look at Chicago. I mean, again, I'm old enough. I remember when Richard Nixon had the election stolen in 1960. So to suggest that you don't have theft in Philadelphia is to deny reality. I'm just saying to you, there are clearly cases where you clearly have intimidation. There are cases where you clearly have theft. And so to suggest to us that people who are concerned about honest elections are somehow nutty, I think is a mistake.
Do you see the irony here with Newt Gingrich? He's talking about there's clearly intimidation, that people are this is going to be rigged against the Republicans because there's clearly intimidation. He, of the party that's been decades and decades intimidating voters.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I don't think Trump or maybe Gingrich understands that elections are run by state and local officials, and most state and local officials are Republicans. So if anyone's going to be trying to rig this election, it could be the Republicans.
Well, that's true. You'd think Gingrich would get that a little bit, but Trump certainly doesn't get it. But you're right. I mean, that's the other side of this argument, is the whole party side of it, where it seems as if the Republicans are crying foul over voter fraud in the most bizarre reversal of history that I can imagine.
Right. What I think has been done well is the coupling of the term voter fraud with the term lack of proof.
Right.
There are very few cases. What is it? 50 is what people throw around. You say 6.
Six votes in Philadelphia.
Period.
That's
Right.
one case, 6 votes in Philadelphia. And Gingrich is out there saying, clearly this is happening. And then he goes to the Republican strongholds of Philadelphia, Chicago, St. Louis. I mean, if they're not, if the Democrats win those cities, something's got to be really screwed up.
They are,
right?
yeah, because of course they are going to win those cities.
Yeah, this whole idea of voter fraud, and sending monitors in, and I want to wrap it up because I want us to hear the remains of Rudy Giuliani. He spoke on this. This is America's mayor, and we'll talk about it for a little bit after.
There are a few places, and not many in the swing states. There are a few places where they've been notorious for stealing votes. Pennsylvania, Chicago. There have been places where a lot of cheating has gone on over the years. I know that from my own knowledge of busing people in from Camden. I'm sorry, dead people generally vote for Democrats rather than Republicans.
So he's not talking about elections being stolen, except in some cases when he is talking about elections being stolen.
I would be. If you want me to tell me that I think the election of Philadelphia and Chicago is going to be fair, I would have to be a moron to say that. So I can't sit here and tell you that they don't cheat. And I know because they control the polling places in these areas, there are no Republicans, that it's very hard to get people there who will challenge votes.
It sounds as though you are saying that Trump is serious when he says that the election is going to be stolen.
I'm not saying that.
You just laid out a whole case about how Democrats steal elections.
I've found very few situations where Republicans cheat. They don't control the inner cities the way Democrats do. Maybe if Republicans control the inner cities, they do as much cheating as Democrats.
Well, you control.
That's what's so great. He was the mayor of New York City.
It's great to hear, Gingrich just have said it would be to deny reality. And it's like, so now we're just going to deny reality.
Right.
So Giuliani brings up a good point, though. Trump's outreach for dead voters has been awful.
Yeah.
He hasn't been talking to them at all, really.
That's true.
And that's why they're voting Democrat.
Right. And Rudy Giuliani, who looked there like maybe a dead voter, I think is offended by that. But it's a good point because, first of all, more people vote for dead, more Democrats do well among dead people. The line is referring to the fact that in machine politics, they used to get people who were deceased and find people to vote as those people, right? And that happened in New York and it happened in Chicago, happened in the turn of the century and in the 20s, and then mob-controlled and Daley-controlled Chicago in the 50s and 70s. But it didn't happen a lot. It happened because when it happened, it was a good story, and the newspaper people loved covering it, et cetera. That's not what's going on here. I mean, dead candidates is different. 5 Democrats who had already died have won in the history of
That's amazing.
It's amazing. The last was Mel Carnahan in Missouri, whose wife then took over the seat. But he beat John Ashcroft, so that was pretty good. The late Mel Carnahan beat John Ashcroft. But this whole idea of intimidation. This is a different kind of intimidation. This is a different kind of keeping people away from the polls. It's saying it bluntly, but for different reasons, that it's corrupt, that it's rigged. So people might be afraid to go to the polls. Democratic voters may not want to go there. And listen to what this Ohio voter said to the Boston Globe. This is a gentleman called Steve Webb. This is number 5. He's saying about watching the precincts, he said, Trump said to watch your precincts. I'm going to go for sure. I'll look for, well, it's called racial profiling. Mexicans, Syrians, people who can't speak American. Right? And that's what, this is informed by. Is it not? I mean, don't you think that's what this conversation's about?
That's one where you're interviewing the guy and you're like, you said that? You said that?
You really said that. We have another one of those when we get to old friend Hillary Clinton.
I believe Trump or one of his surrogates said that people should go into districts where they're not a voter and watch them, which feels like saying, hey, white supporters, go into the black neighborhoods and make sure they're not committing voter fraud.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then you'd have to find someone who says openly that that's racial profiling. Yeah. And where are you going to find that?
But then do you find people in those neighborhoods who are just afraid to go out and vote because they know this is happening? Isn't that what this is? This is voter suppression and intimidation by saying it's rigged?
It is absolutely voter. I mean, it's a step further than to say it's rigged. You can rig it. You say it's rigged and wink. This is saying go out there. And for someone I think that guy said he's going to do everything legally. But no, that is illegal. That is voter intimidation.
Right.
And what do you think it's going to look like when you get to the polls? In what way do you think you're going to watch your polling place? What skills do you have once you're there? Do you think when people are stealing the election, they're going to look like robbers leaving the bank with the dollar sign on it instead it just says election? Is that what you think you're going to see? No. You're going to get there. You're going to get angry. You're going to be like the guys we covered last week on the show who are standing there with guns for 12 hours leaned against their trucks.
Because it's legal.
And it's going to be all day.
I just like the image of someone coming back with the glasses and the fake nose and the mustache and coming to vote again.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's what they think is going to happen.
That's what they think. I mean, but we laugh at it, but that's what they're trying to make people think is happening everywhere. And it simply is not happening. And certainly when it does happen, it's not happening in election-changing degrees. There's no proof of it. I'm not saying because I know. The people that have tried to prove that have always failed to prove it.
I'm concerned with what's going to happen once the people who are being told to go monitor polling places get out there and 5 hours in they realize this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Are they going to leave? Hopefully. They won't even show up. But if they don't leave, hopefully they don't get frustrated and start fights.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And who's there at the polling places to say, guys, you have to leave?
Right.
Do we have those kinds of people at the ready? What would those people even be that you dispatch? It seems like from our earlier discussion, it's going to be someone saying, well, you're bringing a bunch of people, I'm going to bring a bunch of people.
Well, it's the same people that the Tea Party and the Republicans called on, the Minutemen, to go to the border and make sure people aren't crossing the border illegally, right? Well, we have the Border Patrol there, but we're just going to send this citizens militia in there to make sure that they're doing their job. That's exactly what this is. And it's intimidation. And that was a violent intimidation. This is a threatening intimidation, which I guess is intimidation by its nature. And so you understand why these people who fought so hard for voting rights in the 60s, people like John Lewis, and you can name them all, are looking at this and saying, wait a second, this is, again, intimidation at the ballot box. And people can't stand for this. And that's what you're getting with Donald Trump right now. And that's what you're getting with his two most moronic, I would say, surrogates. Well, it's hard to say most moronic when you look at a lot of his surrogates. But Rudy Giuliani, Rudy Giuliani won in New York City. He became mayor in New York City. He beat, but before that, he lost to David Dinkins by 3%. He has been on this since losing by 75,000 votes in 1993 to David Dinkins. He has been on this since then, and I think that's going to stop.
And even still, like, what has he found while being on this?
Right.
Like, what is the proof?
Nothing. He became mayor for 8 years.
If it's that, I
was
mean, but then
89,
again,
not 93.
Then again, maybe being on this, like, just proves how good the voter fraud is.
It's like
and
it's
how hidden.
high grade voter fraud.
And the same people who, I don't know, I don't know, within the general election, I could see people on the other side who are being like, Florida, votes disappeared to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I was one of those
Brooklyn.
people. I still might be. But
You're allowed to be. I mean, there are instances of it happening, but to say that there's like this massive, organized voter fraud thing. There's a postman that's being, somebody who works at the post office said he's glad he works at the post office because he's tearing up Trump absentee ballots. How does he know they're Trump absentee ballots, right?
Yeah.
That he's tearing them up. And even if there is one rogue person doing that, a few votes are going to go away. It happens every year. The problem in Florida was that ballot.
I believe you can alter an election, rig it in some way at very localized levels. Like Florida was such a historically close election that perhaps there was some foul play there.
Difference, yeah.
But I don't see this election being that close. I don't see it being down to 50 votes or something like that, where maybe that would matter.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm probably wrong, but if this is as elaborate a scheme as Giuliani is implying it is, then I don't think standing there at the polls while people vote is going to uncover that.
Right.
Like, I think you need to find, like, the smoking gun in a bunch of emails and sniff at them until you find the larger, vote disappearing apparatus.
Totally.
I just don't see any benefit of doing this because folks have been very vigilant at the polls and haven't been able to turn things up.
But, when they're losing in the courts on these voting rights issues and they think that blaming the rigged system is going to get people to doubt the veracity of this election and also at the same time keep some people from coming out because they'll feel intimidated, then it's a ploy that's working, and you see all his people believe it's a rigged election. He says it every 10 minutes or every 10 seconds.